Hello, this is McD the Beast, and this is McD Sports 4 coming to you today with my SEC football predictions for the 2021 college football season. We are officially under 2 weeks before the college football season starts. A lot of videos are going to be coming your way, including this one with the SEC football prediction video today on Monday. I already did my preseason top 25. I already did the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12 football prediction videos. Go check that out. Um, I'm going to be honest with you. It's going to be tough getting Conference USA and MAC done. And even Sun Belt done. There is a few teams in the Sun Belt that I do want to do. Those videos are actually already done. I just got to make them public, and I'll be making them public throughout the week. Same thing with Notre Dame. I just got to make that video public as well. And I do want to film a Liberty video, Liberty Army, and I haven't done Appalachian State. But I do want to do them as well. So those three videos, I still got to film them and go ahead and do those and try to get those out before August 28th. I also have to do Pac 12. That's coming out Wednesday. America's coming out Friday. I'm going to try also get the Mountain West done that weekend as well. But season's coming to a start here, August 28th, less than 2 weeks. Next week is week 0 pre-game week, so can't wait for that. But today, SEC football prediction video. Before I continue, hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to your channel. Greatly appreciate you if you guys do that. Have a subscriber goal, 500 subscribers. Love to hit that goal by the end of the year. That's the goal. Just go ahead, hit that subscribe button. You will not regret it. The SEC is the best conference in football, hands down this year. I legitimately think this conference might be 13 deep. I think 13 out of 14 teams do have a shot to make a bowl game this year in the SEC. That's just insane to me. But overall, the SEC, in my opinion, is the best conference in football. So let's get into it. The East and the West. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna actually kick it off with the East. And first place in the East, I got Georgia going undefeated, 12-0, 8-0 in the conference. Yes, I do think it'd be Clemson week 1. I went back. I was originally saying Clemson was gonna win that game, but then Eric Gilbert, he came in. I thought that was gonna be the difference, even though he's away from the team right now. I'll admit that that's not good, but hopefully he's back before that Clemson game. Hopefully it's just something minor. Um, you look at Georgia. I mean, the offense should be the best offense under Kirby Smart. The only question is how much does Kirby Smart want to run the ball? And I do appreciate that Kirby Smart. He likes running the ball. Zamir Wright, that guy's gonna be pretty good there at running back for Georgia. I do appreciate that. But I do think with the quarterback being JT Daniels, I do think you got to open up the offense a little bit if you're Georgia. So I do expect Georgia to throw the ball a little bit more than some of the previous years. Defensively, they're not going to be much. There's not going to be much of an issue, even if only 5 stars returning. They got the great transfer out of West Virginia. They got Gilbert out of LSU. They got the guy out of Clemson. He transferred over to Clemson as well. So I mean, there's a lot of transfers on this team, and overall, I do think that Georgia. I do think that they are going to be probably one of, if not the best teams in the country. If you look at my preseason poll, they are a top 5 in anybody's preseason poll that has a functioning brain. So you just look at Georgia, big matchup, week 1 against Clemson. I do not think if they lose that game, I do not think their season is over because they do play in the SEC. And I do think the committee looks at them playing an SEC schedule, which, by the way, I do think they're going to probably be double point favorites against every team they face in the SEC. I mean, except maybe the SEC championship game. But I do think that as long as they go undefeated in the SEC, go 11-1, get to Atlanta, Georgia for the SEC championship game, they will have a shot as long as they win that game to make the playoffs. But you look at this team, clearly the best team in the East. I don't think there's a close second, honestly. I just don't. Maybe we look back and maybe it was a bit closer. Between first and second, and maybe what I think, but I think Georgia is clearly the best team in the SEC East, and I don't think it's close. Second place in the SEC East, I got Missouri. This is a bit bold, I'll admit. It was very close between Missouri, Florida, and Kentucky, but I went with Missouri. I'm high on this team. Eli Drinkwitz definitely knows what he's doing. They bring back 8 on offense, 6 defensively. They are going to be. It looks like they are going to be starting a freshman quarterback, which does concern me a little bit. But the rest of the team around Missouri is pretty good in my opinion. I mean, you look at this team all together. Grant, they also lose Larry Roundtree. I think that is a bit of a big loss right there. But they bring in Tyler Batty. That guy's pretty good. He's pretty good. Um, so overall, I do think that this team's gonna be pretty good with Missouri. The way the schedule lines up, I actually think the schedule lines up that you guys can finish second in the SEC East. You get Florida at home, which I think is huge. You go ahead, you get Tennessee at home. You do have that road game against Kentucky. More on that in a second. Which, by the way, I'll just come out and say right now, I do think you lose that road game to Kentucky. You get 3-1 in the non-conference. I think you lose that road game to Boston College. But overall, I look at the SEC. You get Tennessee at home. You get South Carolina and Florida at home. You do have Vandy out of the East as well. I think you win that game. Um, but overall, I just feel like Missouri. I really feel like they surprised some people last year. Um, and I mean, I know at the end of last season they weren't that good. They lost against Georgia. Grant, Georgia's pretty good, but then they went on the road and lose a pick 'em to Mississippi State in blowout fashion. But I like this team. I really do. I really do. I just have a gut feeling Missouri's going to go 7-5, 4-4 in the SEC East, and I think 4-4 if it plays out the way I think it's going to play out. I think depending on what happens with the other teams, I think 4-4 might be second place in the SEC East. That's how big of a gap I think it is. I mean, granted, personally, my gut tells me 5-3 is going to win the SEC. Not win the SEC. 5-3 is going to be second place in the SEC East, but I think it's going to be 4-4, especially if Missouri comes in second. Third place is Florida. I do think they go undefeated in the non-conference Florida, but I look at this SEC schedule. I mean, Alabama week 3 at home, I think is a loss. That's gonna be a very, very crucial game for Florida. That's gonna tell you all you need to know about Florida. They only bring back 5 on each side. Alright, only bring back 5 defensively with a defense that had a lot of question marks. Um, I just don't think that's a good thing there. They bring back Todd Grantham as a defense coordinator, even though everybody wanted him fired. But you look at the schedule, I think they go undefeated in the non-conference, as I said. Florida Atlantic at South Florida, and then that big game, week 3 at home against Alabama. That's going to tell you everything you need to know about Florida. Personally, I think they lose that game by 14 to 17 points. Right now, I believe they're a 12 to 14 point dog in that game, which I think is the correct number. But I do think that game will be at least competitive. Then you get Tennessee at home. Don't let you guys get beat up by Alabama where you start off slow against Tennessee. I'll talk about what I think about Tennessee here in a second. But at Kentucky, I think is a losable game, even though I refuse to pick Florida to lose to Kentucky. I just do. I just think there's a mindset there that Kentucky believes that Florida is just better than them. Vandy at home will be a win, but at LSU, I think that's a loss. Georgia in the world's largest cocktail party. I think that's a loss. And I think you lose that road game to Missouri as your 4th loss there. And I think that's the tiebreaker there. I think that Florida at Missouri game in week 12, November 20th, is a huge game to determine who's second place in the SEC East. I think with the game in Missouri, I think Mizzou goes ahead and beats Florida in that one. You finish off the season against a Florida State team that I'm actually pretty high on, but I think you guys beat them. But overall, I'm pretty high on Missouri. Florida, I think. Yeah, I'll say this about Florida. I know some people are down on them. Emory Jones, some people think that's a big downgrade. Though he reminds me a lot of Dak Prescott. He does. I don't know with how the schedule lines up. I mean, you get Alabama at OSU, Georgia. I mean, can you win one of those two? Because I think the best case scenario for Florida is 10-2 personally with the schedule. I think the schedule's tougher than it really looks. Even in the non-conference, I mean, I'm high on Florida State. If you watch the ACC football prediction video, you know I'm high on Florida State. Um, I think they'll beat the other three non-con games, but I mean, at Kentucky, people are high on Kentucky. At South Carolina, I'm going to speak with them on a second. At Missouri, people are high on them. I think they're going to be decent this year at least. At LSU, I'm high on LSU more than that in a second, but I just feel like the way schedule lines up, I feel like Florida could maybe drop a game or two that they don't want to drop, but I still think this is a top 25 team. I still think Dan Mullen's a really good coach, and even though I do kind of trash him occasionally, because I do think he's kind of out there a little bit, we'll say. But I think Florida. I'm kind of feeling 2014 Mississippi State vibes possibly with this team. I'm not going to predict it because I don't have the guts to, but I think this team could be better than what a lot of people think. I really do, but my gut tells me to just predict them go third in the East because I don't know on paper if they'll get enough to even come in second in the SEC East. So 8-4, 4-4 in the conference with Florida. Fourth place is South Carolina. This might be a surprise to y'all. I am high on the South Carolina team. I am very high on Shane Beamer. I watch a lot of press conferences. This is a guy that I think anybody would want to play for personally. I know they had a little bit of a scare with Luke Doty this past week. It turns out he's going to be ready to go week one, it sounds like. I know it's a sprained foot. Maybe he's out week one, and maybe they just put him in against East Carolina week two. But I think this team's going to surprise some people. I really do. I think the way the schedule lines up, look at the non-conference schedule. I think they go 3-1 in the non-conference with that loss at the end of the year to Clemson, obviously. But I mean, they have Eastern Illinois, FCS opponent. They'll beat them at East Carolina. I'm going to talk about them more in Friday's video. But East Carolina, I do think might take a step in the right direction this year. Even with that game on the road, though, I'm going to say South Carolina wins that game by a few scores. And then Troy at home, they're starting to head back in the right direction after a downfall. But I do think that South Carolina will win that game, especially there and Columbia, South Carolina at home. But you look at the SEC schedule, Kentucky at home. I think you guys win that game. I really do. Is at home. I think that's a big test for South Carolina to tell you where they're at, and I think you guys win that game. The Vandy game you'll win, and I think this is kind of bold. I think you beat Auburn week 12, November 20th. I think you guys do. Um, I'm not that high on Auburn this year. I'll admit it, and I'll talk about the reason why when we get to them. But I think you guys win 3 games in the SEC no matter what. I think you go 3-1 in the non-conference. I think you guys finish the season 6-6, get yourselves into a bowl game, 3-5 in the SEC. Look at this team; they're returning 8 offensively, 6 defensively. Uh, Overall, the running back situation I really like with Kevin Harris. I really like that. I think he can be the best running back in the SEC. I think this team's better than what a lot of people think. I'm gonna go out there and build on a limb and say they finished 4th in the SEC. They get into a bowl game, 3-5 in the SEC, and after the season, I think there's gonna be talk about South Carolina maybe even being in some top 25 polls going into 2022. 5th place in the SEC East, Kentucky. Kentucky is kind of just the stereotypical 7-8 win program. I think they win 7 this year. Schedule's a bit tricky. I think they go 3-5 in the SEC. I think they go 4-0 in the non-conference with Louisiana Monroe, Chattanooga, New Mexico State in that at Louisville game to end the year. I think they do go on the road and beat Louisville. But you look at the SEC schedule. I think they get a big win at home week 2 against Missouri. But after that, at South Carolina, I think my gut tells me you're losing that. Florida at home. As I said, it's one of those things like Kentucky just doesn't believe they could beat Florida. They only beat them once since 1986. It was actually Dan Mullen's first year back in 2018. But that's just one of those games. Kentucky these past few years had several opportunities to finish that game and beat Florida, but they just haven't. So that tells me that's an internal issue that they just don't believe that they're better than Florida. So I'm going to say you lose that game. The LSU game, I think that game's competitive, but I think you lose that one. And then at Georgia, I think you lose that one. At Mississippi State, I think you lose that one. But you go ahead, I think you beat the Tennessee schools in Tennessee and at Vanderbilt and finish the season on a 4-game winning streak going into the season, going into a bowl season. So I think you start the season 3-5. I do. I think things can maybe even be going a little bit south there. Maybe even Mark Stoops, maybe his seat gets warm a little bit. But at the end, I do think you finish this November going 4-0 and get to a bowl game at 7-5, 3-5 in the SEC. You turn 5 defensively, 7 offensively. Quarterback, I think, is a question for this team. I think overall, though, Mark Stoops, I trust him. You know what he's gonna do there at Kentucky. They're gonna find a way to win at a minimum 6 games, at the most 8 or 9 games, and they're just gonna make a bowl game every year there at Kentucky. Mark Stoops has really built a very good program there at Kentucky over the years, because I remember back in 2016 he was on the hot seat, and all of a sudden he started making bowl games. They had a big breakout year in 2018 when they went 10-3. 2019 they went ahead. Lynn Bowden kind of had to come in the second half of the season and save the season. They ended the season on a 4-game winning streak, including a bowl game in the Belk Bowl against Virginia Tech. So overall, I really just feel like Kentucky, I feel like they're just gonna be there. I feel like they're just gonna be there. 6th place in the SEC East. Tennessee, I think they make a bowl game. I really do. I look how the schedule lines up. I know some people think they're gonna lose that game at home against Pitt in week 2. I think you guys beat Pitt at home in week 2. You'll beat Bowling Green. You'll beat Tennessee Tech. You'll beat South Alabama all at home. SEC schedule, I think you beat Vandy, and I think you beat South Carolina. I think those are your 2 SEC wins. I think you have potential maybe go on the road, maybe pick off a Missouri or a Kentucky. I think that Ole Miss game, honestly, is kind of winnable. Also at home, even though I think you guys will lose that one. You look at Tennessee, new head coach and Josh Heupel. He's just going to go there and score a lot of points. That's what he's going to do. That's kind of what he's going to do there at Tennessee. I think they're going to be in a lot of shootouts type games when he starts getting his type of players there at Tennessee. I think they're going to go with Joe Milton quarterback. It's what I'm going to guess because I think he does have an arm. I just think he needs work on reading defenses. But overall, I'm actually think Tennessee. I think they're going to be the type of team under Heupel at least. I know Tennessee seems like they have a new head coach every 3-4 years. Bush Jones, say what you want about him. At least he beat Florida once, and at least he had that team looking like they could compete to win the SEC East. You had Jeremy Pruitt, first season, 5-7. Second season, 8-5. Had that team going in the right direction. Then they fell flat, going 3-7, and the whole paying money in McDonald's bag thing. I mean, that's just something you can't just make up. So I do believe that the whole story is true. You look at Josh Heupel. Is also the UCF athletic director coming in, so that's why obviously the hire is made. I know UCF kind of took a step backwards with him at the helm of head coach, but I'll say this about Josh Heupel. I do think he's gonna find ways to score points in the SEC. I think he's gonna be in a lot of shootouts, as I said, and I just think personally, I just feel like Tennessee, my gut tells me they'll go 6-6, 2-6 in the SEC, and get to a bowl game. And then last place in the SEC East is Vanderbilt, 3-9, 0-8 in the SEC. I do think they go 3-1 in the non-conference, including a big win against Stanford at home. I think they beat Stanford at home. I think they go on the road and lose to a Colorado State team, which I do think is going to be at least somewhat improved this year. East Tennessee State, they're beat UConn at home. But you look at the SEC, schedule. Maybe they'll win that game against Tennessee at the end of the season. Maybe they'll go on the road and shock people and and beat South Carolina. Maybe they'll shock a Mississippi State, Missouri, or Kentucky at home. But I have trouble seeing really more than one SEC win. If they do win an SEC game, I would say it's actually that Tennessee game at the end of the year because that's kind of their Super Bowl. They have a new head coach, Clark Lee. Uh, they fired Derek Mason, who's now the defensive coordinator at Auburn. More on that in a second. But my opinion about the whole Clark Lee hiring thing is they should probably never let Derek Mason go. I know things went really south in 2020 there, but I mean, you just look at Vanderbilt. I mean, James Franklin was probably the best thing that ever happened to Vanderbilt. He went what 9-4 with Vanderbilt back-to-back years, and he went I think 4-4 in the SEC twice, maybe even 5-3 in there. But overall, I do think you look at this team, they bring back 9 offensive stars and 8 defensive stars. So it's not like Clark Lee has nothing to work with. He definitely has something to work with. I do think this wide receiver room for Vanderbilt is very underrated. They basically bring back everybody in that room. I do think it's underrated, and I do think they're going to be in some games this year in the SEC. Sort of like what they were, well, not really what they were. I mean, they were in that game against A&M last year, and they were in that game against Kentucky. I could see them being in 2 or 3 SEC games. I just spit out 4 a minute ago that I think could at least be competitive. So it would not surprise me if they win an SEC game. I don't think they do at the end because I just feel like every team that they face this year is better than them. And the only games that I would even remotely consider them beating them. Let me reword that. The only games that I think that are at home that remotely that I think they can even win actually is Mississippi State. I just think Missouri and Kentucky are better than them, even though I could see them being very competitive with both of those teams, especially with Kentucky coming off a bye. But I mean, I just look at Vanderbilt. I think they start the season off strong, 2-1, 3-2 after the Georgia game and the UConn game. After that, I just think it goes south. But I do think this team is a bit better than what some people think. I really do. Now let's go to the SEC West. You look at the SEC West. Um, I think it's the best division in any conference, hands down. I mean, you go ahead, you look at 1 through 7. One of these teams are not going to make a bowl game. I don't think all 7 are going to be making a bowl game, unfortunately. I think at the middle of 1, maybe even 2 of them don't make a bowl game. But we'll get into it. We'll kick off. First place, Alabama. I think they go undefeated. I just do. I know they only bring back 3 offensively. It's basically a bunch of 5 stars on the offensive side that are going to be replacing the 5 stars that even got drafted by the NFL, graduated. 8 defensive stars returning. I don't think a lot of people knows that. Um, this defense, I think, is going to be better than what they were last year, and I think that's scary. You look at the non-conference schedule: Miami, Mercer, let's see, Southern Miss, and New Mexico State. I think you win all 4 of those games. The Miami game, I think you win it by around 3 touchdowns. You go ahead, you look at the conference schedule. I mean, at Florida, I think that is going to be a competitive game. I think at Texas A&M, a lot of people have that game as a loss for Alabama. I disagree. I actually think go in there and beat them by 2 touchdowns, honestly. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit more when I talk about Texas A&M. But I just feel like you guys go in there and beat them by at least probably somewhere around 2 touchdowns. Ole Miss at home. That is the type of game that I do think if there's a game on the schedule that I do think you guys lose is actually that one because they could score. They could just score 50 on just about anybody. But I do think you find a way to win that game even if it's in a shootout. Tennessee, you're beat. At Mississippi State, you're beat. LSU, competitive game. It will not be like last year when it was 55-17, but you guys should win that game probably 10 to 14 points. Arkansas at home, you're beat them. And at Auburn, I do think this game could be a bit competitive, but at the same time, I feel like you guys will win this game by around 3 touchdowns there in Auburn. But 12-0, Nick Saban, best coach ever, hands down, not even close. And I think you guys win the SEC West yet again. Second place is LSU. I'm high on this team. I think LSU is going to be finishing second in the SEC West. I know a lot of people are penciling in uh, Texas A&M. I think it's going to be LSU. They do have the talent. They're bringing back 9 starters on each side. Coach O, I think his seat. There's a perception out there that his seat is warm. I think that plays in LSU's favor. I think LSU is going to be at least around there at the end. I mean, around there, at least competing for a New Year's Six bowl. Look at the non-conference schedule. I think they go undefeated in that. At UCLA, McNeese State, Central Michigan, and Louisiana Monroe. You beat all 4 of those teams. The UCLA game, I actually think you go in there and beat them by around 2 touchdowns. Um, and that's actually not UCLA's first game. They have a week 0 game against Hawaii, which we'll talk about for sure in the Pac-12 football prediction videos on Wednesday. But overall, UCLA, I do feel that game. I do feel like that's a bit of an overhyped game. I think LSU goes in there, takes care of business. Um, Quarterback wise, Miles Brennan, I know he got injured, so now it looks like it's Max Johnson who's going to be the quarterback. I think either way, I don't think either quarterback at LSU is enough to win them a championship. That's why I do not have them winning the SEC West, but I do think the quarterbacks are good enough to take care of the ball and keep them in ball games. You go ahead, you look at the conference schedule at Mississippi State. You'll be favored in that game. I think you get revenge from last year and beat them. You go ahead, you look at that Auburn game. That's probably going to be a telltale sign for both teams there. That's going to be basically uh, the game that tells you all you need to know about each team, in my opinion. I do think you win that game by 7 to 10 points. The swing game. That's the term I was looking for. The swing game. I do think that's the swing game for both teams, and I think you win that game by 7 to 10 points. At Kentucky, competitive game, but you'll win. The Florida game, another game. I think it's going to tell you all you need to know about LSU. I think you guys win that game there in Death Valley. At Ole Miss, at this point going into Ole Miss, I think you guys will be undefeated. I think you'll drop that game to Ole Miss. So that's your first loss of the season. Your bye week at Alabama. It's going to be a lot closer than where it was last year. I'll tell you that. But I do think at the end that you will lose that game by around 10 to 14 points. Arkansas at home, I think you win that one. As I said, Louisiana Monroe, you'll win that one. And then that Texas A&M game, I think that game will determine second place in the SEC West possibly. I think guys will win that game in Death Valley. I think this is gonna be a great year for LSU. I really do. 10-2, 6-2 in the conference. Third place, Ole Miss. Um, this is a bit. People might be a bit surprised by this. Ole Miss is going to score a lot of points on teams. They're going to score a lot of points. I don't know if every team in the SEC is equipped to hang with them scoring points. I know Alabama is. I believe at least Georgia will be in a very competitive game with them. But Ole Miss is the type of team, as long as their defense is not bold, and I know people think this defense is going to improve. I think they'll improve slightly, or at the minimum, maybe, and I think they'll be better than what they were last year, returning 9 starters. But this defense isn't as good. Is not good enough to compete for national championships or SEC titles, in my opinion. You look at this team. I think they go undefeated in the non-conference. Louisville, Austin P, Tulane, and then Liberty. That's kind of a tricky non-conference schedule. Austin P, you're beat, but Louisville Monday night game on Labor Day kick off the college football season. Their last game of the week 1. I think you guys go in there and stomp them around. I really think this game's gonna be a blowout. I don't know why some of these magazines like Athlon think Louisville's gonna win this game. I don't know what they're looking at honestly. If Louisville's defense is anything like it was last year, Ole Miss might hang 60 on them. So I think that Ole Miss is going to at least hang 50 on them. And I think they win that game by 4 touchdowns, honestly. Tulane, they are one of the better teams in the American. You will beat them, though, however. I think this game's competitive in the first half. I really do. But I think you beat them by 3, 4 touchdowns. Same thing with Liberty. I think this is going to be a competitive game. I think you might only beat them by 2 touchdowns. But with Hugh Freeze coming back, that's going to be a huge game there for Ole Miss with him coming back. But I think you're undefeated in the non-conference. Your 3 losses overall are all going to be in the SEC, with them being at Alabama. I think you lose that game at Auburn, and then I think you lose that game, the Egg Bowl. I think you lose that rivalry game to end the season. But I think this is going to be a great year for Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is a top 25 team. They're number 25, I believe, in my preseason top 25. Go check out that video on McD Sports 4. But overall, I do think that I just feel like Ole Miss is. I think they're ready to make some noise, and I think they will this season. And fourth place, Texas A&M. Fourth place. I still think Texas A&M is a top 15 team. Don't get me wrong. But I also do think that this team, the way the schedule lines up, they're going to finish fourth in the SEC West. In the non-conference, they go undefeated. Obviously, Kent State, Colorado, New Mexico, and Perry View A&M. They'll beat Perry View A&M, New Mexico. I think actually New Mexico takes a step in the right direction in the Mountain West, but they'll beat them easily. Kent State, they'll beat, even though they're one of the better teams in the MAC. Colorado, the game is in Denver. It's not in Boulder. It's in Denver, but I do think Texas A. Man, I have trouble saying A&M sometimes. I do think Texas A&M beats Colorado handily. I think they beat them by at least 3 touchdowns. Look at the conference schedule. That Arkansas game sometimes is really close. It was close last season. 42-31 last season. So that game always seems to be close. Even in 19, that game was close, 31-27 when and 18 when Arkansas was really bad under Chad Morris. One possession games. I mean, that's gonna be a close win, I think, for Texas A&M at the end. Mississippi State, I think you beat that Alabama game. I know a lot of Texas A&M fans think that you're gonna beat Alabama. I do not think you're gonna beat Alabama, and you're gonna sit there and be like, "Oh, we're basically the same team as last year. We lost them 52-23, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm looking at my notes correctly. 52-24. 52-24. Almost got the score correct. But, I mean, you haven't been close to them at all, really, since Jimbo's been there. I mean, I'm looking at the 18 score I have here in my notes. 45-23. The 19 score, 2019 score, 47-28. I mean, I do think this game's going to be the closest game between these two teams since Jimbo Fisher has arrived there at Texas A&M. But I mean, and I know Jimbo Fisher saying this offensive line, he does lose 4 of their 5 offensive linemen. They do lose, but Jimbo Fisher thinks this is a better offensive line. And they only bring back 6 offensively. They bring back 9 defensively. I just think that, I mean, at the end of the day, until they are in a one possession game against them, there's just no way I'm picking Texas A&M to beat Alabama. I just can't do it. So I think you lose that game. I think you go ahead and lose the the Ole Miss game. I think you lose. I think that is the tiebreaker there for third place that game, and I think you guys lose at LSU to end the season. But I think this team is a top 15 team. I think this team is going to prove that they are a top 15 team. I just think the way the schedule lines up. I know Alabama, you get them at home. I refuse to pick Texas A&M to beat Alabama. With Ole Miss and LSU on the road, I just think you drop both of those. But Texas A&M 4th place in the SEC West. 5th place is Arkansas. I'm not high on Arkansas at all, like some of these people are. Some people think Arkansas can win 7, 8 games. The only reason I even have them pencil in to win 6 is because of how the schedules line up. Non-conference schedule, I do think they go 3-1 in the non-conference, losing to Texas. They also get Rice, Georgia Southern, and Arkansas Pine Bluff at home. And they also get Texas at home. But I think you lose a tight game to that Texas team. And I already did the Big 12 football predictions. Go check that out if you want to hear my thoughts about Texas. But you look at Arkansas. They surprisingly went 3-7 last year when they were expected to go 0-10. They went ahead and beat Mississippi State, a team that, let's be honest, that was basically a fluke what happened week 1 against LSU last season. Georgia, yeah, granted they were in that game big time in the first half, but Georgia pulled away and they lost by 27. They did beat Ole Miss in a game that Ole Miss turned the ball over 7 times, and they beat Tennessee, a Tennessee team that's basically the same as they were, 3-7, a game at home. So give them credit for being Tennessee, I guess. But I just look at this team. I know they're bringing back 19 out of 21 starters, 9 offensively, 10 defensively. I know the fan base loves Sam Pittman. I just look at this team. I mean, I just don't think they can really compete against the elite in the SEC. Basically, the 4 teams in front of them, and Georgia and Florida. But I do think they can compete against everybody else in the SEC. You go ahead, look at the SEC schedule. The games I think they win, I think they beat Auburn, I think they beat Mississippi State, I think they do beat Mizzou to end the season there, to get themselves in a bowl game. I think they'll go into that game 5-6 and get themselves into a bowl game there against Mizzou. But overall, I just think Arkansas is just. I just view them. I think they fight. I think they're fighting to get to a bowl game. I think at the end they will succeed in getting into a bowl game. But 6-6 is the best I see them going, really. And I tried looking for 7-8 wins. I just couldn't find them. So 6-6, 3-5 in the SEC. Sixth place Mississippi State. Mississippi State, in my opinion, I mean Mike Leach. Say what you want about him. Guy's a borderline Hall of Fame coach. Personally, I don't think he is. Um, but the guy knows what he's doing. You look at last season, 4-7. I do think this team kind of found themselves late. You look at after getting literally shellacked by that Alabama game, and after that weird game against Alabama, the season kind of changed from there. With the Vandy win, they won by a touchdown. They went on the road and lost to Georgia, but 31-24. They went on the road and lost to Ole Miss, 31-24. They lost to Auburn, 24-10. That was actually the last game before Gus Malzahn got fired. And then the Mizzou game, a pick'em game at home, they did basically blow out Mizzou, and they did win that bowl game against Tulsa. I think this team kind of found themselves late last year. Will Rogers, I think, kind of fits this offense that Mike Leach wants to run. You look at Mississippi State. I do think that they lose that Memphis game in the non-conference. So I think they go 3-1 in the non-conference. And this non-conference schedule is no joke. I mean, Tennessee State, okay, week 12, you beat them. But Louisiana Tech, definitely one of the better teams in the Conference USA. I think you beat them at home. NC State, one of the better teams in the ACC. I think you beat them at home as well. But I think you do lose that Memphis game on the road week 3. You look at the SEC schedule, 3-5. Vandy, Kentucky, and Ole Miss, I think, are your 3 wins there in the SEC. I think you lose that road game against Auburn. I think you guys lose that road game against Arkansas, which will be the difference between 5th and 6th here. LSU game, yeah, you get them in Stark Vegas. You do lose to them. That was a fluke last year. And then obviously at A&M, I think you guys lose. Alabama, I don't care that game's in Stark Vegas. You'll lose to them. And basically, I think you guys find a way to get to a bowl game. 6-6, 3-5 in the SEC. You bring back 8 on each side, 8 offensive starters, 8 defensive starters. You're actually ranked. I don't know if they changed the FBI, but you open up number 8 in the FBI. So, definitely a team here that I actually think will at least find a way to get to a bowl game. So, and I know the FBI is no one cares about it, but it is kind of eye-opening that they opened up 8th. I mean, you look at this team, they're actually not as bad as you might think. So, 6-6, 3-5 in the SEC. And then seventh place, Auburn. Out of all the teams, and looking at every schedule, I said one team out of the West is not getting to a bowl game. Unfortunately, I think that's Auburn. And I know you might get, I'm not going to say get upset, but if you're an Auburn fan, you might be a bit disappointed in this. But first year head coach Brian Harsin, who I do believe in, and you'll probably see I'm going to defend him very heavily on this channel. I do think he will work out there at the end in Auburn. But I do think year one, I think it's going to be a struggle for a few reasons. New coaching staff, always tricky there. I do like the defensive coordinator hire, Derek Mason. I do not like the offensive coordinator hire. Um, God, I forget his name. He was at South Carolina last year. Um, here, it's in my notes. Let's see where his name's at. Um, God, I forget his name. But he was at Tennessee at one point. He was at. I mean, he's been all around the SEC. Basically, maybe it's in my South Carolina notes, but I'll try to get his name for you guys if it comes to me. But I do not like that hire. That guy, I think has been proven to be pretty mediocre when it comes to coaching offenses throughout the SEC. Um, overall, um, Mike Bobo, that's his name, Mike Bobo, former coach at Colorado State. I had it here on my notes for the South Carolina section of my notes, but Mike Bobo, not a big fan of him at all. I'm just not. I just don't. I think he's proven over time coaching in the SEC. I just think he's proven over time that he's not the elite offensive coordinator that some of these big programs want, like Auburn does. I also think Brian Harsin is gonna struggle year one because of the schedule. I mean, have you looked at the schedule that Auburn has to play? I had them going 3-1 in the non-conference with that loss on the road in Happy Valley at Penn State. If I could get back to my Auburn notes here. Here we go. Yeah, Auburn. They have that road game week 3 on the road against Penn State. I think they lose that game. Akron and Alabama State. I think they win those two. They'll go ahead and beat Georgia State as well. They don't start their SEC schedule till October. I think they go 2-6 in the SEC. The games I think they win. I think they get a big win against Ole Miss at home coming off that bye week. I do think Auburn will get a big win there, and I think they beat the other Mississippi school as well in Mississippi State. So I think they beat the Mississippi schools, but I don't think they beat anybody else. Georgia, um, 2 touchdown loss most likely at LSU, 7 and 10 point loss. That Arkansas game's a pick 'em. I gave it to Arkansas since they're the home team. At South Carolina, I think you guys will be a bit of a favorite in that game, but I think you lose that game. And then Texas A&M, you lose to them by 2 touchdowns, and then the Alabama game, I think you lose to them by 3 touchdowns. I think they're going to be very competitive this year, Auburn. You bring back 15 stars, 8 offensively, 7 defensively. They're trying to run a new offense there. I know Tank Bigsby, man, I had trouble. Tank Bigsby. I do think he's going to have a lot of success in this offense, but I think it's just going to take a year. I'm also not sold on your quarterback in Bo Nix. I am not sold on him at all. Um, I don't think he's that good at all, honestly. I don't think he's a quarterback that could take you to competing for the SEC, honestly. But if you're an Auburn fan, I'll say give Brian Harsin a year or two, and I think you're going to start liking the results. I hope I'm wrong about this personally because I do think he is going to succeed big time there at Auburn, especially after Saban retires in a few years. But overall, I feel like year one is going to be a bit of a struggle, primarily because they're installing a new offense, and um, I mean he's coming from Boise State. I mean he doesn't know jack about the SEC. The SEC compared to any other conference, it's just it's a lot different than any other conference. And I just feel I know Urban Meyer kind of came in there and led up the world, winning a national championship year 2. But I even think year 1 he lost 2 or 3 games. So it is a lot different coming from Boise State to Auburn in the SEC. So, and listen, I'm pulling for Brian Harsin. I think he will succeed at Auburn at the end, but I think year one is going to be a struggle, especially with that schedule. I mean, you get Penn State out of the non-conference. A lot of your so-called 50-50 games, um, or your tougher competitions on the road. So at the end of the day, I just see 5-7, 2-6. Won't surprise me if they get into a bowl game. But overall, I just don't think. I think at the end of the day, I think Auburn's going to struggle a little bit year one under Brian Harsin. But after that, I think it's going to be a big trajectory up. So Alabama and Georgia is my SEC championship. What a surprise! I mean, it's tough not picking this as your SEC championship, guys. Let's be honest. And then I got Alabama winning the whole thing again. I mean, you look at, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, Georgia, I think the offense is going to be better. I think, Kirby Smart in the defense, that's going to be clicking. But I just refuse to pick against Nick Saban. I just do. And that's why I'm picking Alabama to win the SEC yet again. And it seems like until Nick Saban retires, I'm probably going to pick Auburn. I mean, I'm probably going to pick Alabama to win the SEC every year. So Alabama wins the SEC 13-0, 8-0 in the conference. Those are my SEC football predictions. Comment down below. Tell me what you think about the SEC. I always like hearing from you all. I know these years are kind of long, 40, 50 minutes. I don't know how long this one's going to be. But we'll do the Pac-12 on Wednesday, and then we'll do the American Friday. I might not do the Mountain West, but I do want to talk about Boise State a little bit, so I might make a video for Boise State this weekend. So go ahead and stay tuned for that. But thanks for watching the video. Hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. Greatly appreciate if you do that. Thanks for watching. McD the